Hello and welcome to this special broadcast that we are bringing to you in collaboration with Voice of America. My name is Mohammed Saleh. The many American states, in fact, permit cameras to televise courtroom proceedings, but federal courts do not do so. But some U.S. lawmakers are now trying to change this rule for the expected federal trials of the former President Donald Trump. And Voice of America's Veronica Balderas gets you more details.
A televised trial of former U.S. President Donald Trump would likely draw massive interest. But since cameras are forbidden in federal courtrooms, only a few sketches now tell the story of his recent appearances in Washington and Miami. Changing the rules against televising proceedings would be a complex process.
The president's actions.
But several Democratic lawmakers and even Trump's lawyer, John Lauro, argue that cameras in court will improve transparency. In contrast, some, including the Wall Street Journal's editorial board, worry the presence of cameras could negatively impact trial proceedings. Former federal prosecutor Mark McDougal agrees.
I think it's really a question of the effect it has on the participants in the trial, the judges, the judge, the lawyers, the witnesses, and so forth.
Others argue that in America's highly polarized politics, where even basic facts are up for debate, a camera feed could be critical for accountability, says political analyst Calvin Dark.
If there are no cameras in the courtroom, what the judges are then contributing to is the possibility of misinformation or somebody who's in the courtroom misrepresenting or taking out of context what actually happened.
Trump will be a presidential candidate when he goes on trial. Political scientist Dean Lacey says it's hard to predict how the televised proceedings will affect his popularity.
He could rally his supporters and get a lot of free airtime in the middle of a primary. It could also be a big negative. He could end up incriminating himself. He could end up losing a reputation among independents, maybe among some of his core supporters.
Nearly all U.S. states allow cameras in their courtrooms. High-profile cases, such as the trial of O.J. Simpson on murder charges, or the murder conviction of Officer Derek Chauvin in the death of George Floyd, were broadcast live. A new indictment of Donald Trump on election-related charges is expected later in Georgia, where cameras are permitted in courtrooms at the judge's discretion. Veronica Balderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
To give us more insights into the story, we're being joined in by Voice of America's Jessica Stone, who's joining us live from the White House at this moment. Now, Jessica, Veronica's report, in fact, mentions another pending set of charges against the former president in the state of Georgia. When do we expect to hear more about that case?
Well, it looks like those charges are going to come down next week in the state of Georgia. What we're talking about here is a case relating to a pretty infamous phone call that Donald Trump made to the Georgia Secretary of State, in which he asked him to find, quote, 11,780 votes. That, of course, was the number that was separating Joe Biden from Donald Trump in the election in that state. Joe Biden went on to win Georgia. He then went on, of course, to win the U.S. presidential election. And Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis is expected to seek more than a dozen charges next week against Mr. Trump, among them allegations that he made calls to other staffers involved in ballot counting, pressured Georgia's governor to hold a special election, organized a group of 16 residents to act as false electors for him. And the possible charges range from racketeering to conspiracy to solicitations. Again, the timing of these charges appears to be at this point next week. The Trump team very much been expecting these charges to come down, so they are ready to go. And Mr. Trump already talking about them on the campaign trail.
Absolutely, indeed. And also the fact that we're just 2 weeks away now from the first debate amongst the possible GOP candidates for the 2024 race. So who's in, who's out, and what does it all mean for the nomination process?
Yeah, we've been getting people in and out just this week alone. This is the August 23rd Fox News debate set to be held in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Fox News, according to polling, a trusted source for Republican voters. And there's room for 8 candidates. We know that former Vice President Mike Pence is in. We know that former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is in, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, current North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, as well as current Senator from the state of South Carolina, Tim Scott. The Republican National Committee says a condition of participating in this debate, though, is that you have to be able to sign a pledge that you will support the eventual nominee. Turns out Donald Trump has had trouble with that in the past, and he has trouble with that right now. He has refused to sign that pledge, indicating he may not meet the qualifications that the RNC has to go to the debate. Not a huge surprise. He's been on the fence. But he recently made additional comments to the conservative outlet Newsmax, where he said he's not even sure it's worth it for him to be in the debate. He's obviously already leading by double digits. The other candidates, he holds a lead as high as 35% without even participating in one of these debates. But of course, as a voter, you wonder how easy is it going to be for these Republican primary voters to really get a handle on what these candidates stand for, in particular the front runner, given all of the indictments against him, given all of the allegations against him. It would be helpful, many political observers say, for these voters to be able to get a listen to what Donald Trump has to say today, what policies he'll pursue, and how they may differ, what he's learned from being in office even. None of that's going to happen if he's not on the dais on August 23rd.
Absolutely, indeed. Very interesting there. Do continue to stay on with this, Jessica. I want you to weigh in on another important story that we are tracking on this broadcast. Now, the United States Congress is reviewing a proposal by the Biden administration to reach a deal with 3 Pacific Island states to deny Beijing access to some 5.6 million square kilometers of the Pacific Ocean. The agreements, known as the Compacts of Free Association, must be passed by the U.S. Congress by the 30th of September. And Jessica Stone interviewed the chief U.S. negotiator to learn more about their role in Washington's Indo-Pacific strategy and also the urgency of reaching a deal for countries such as India. Listen in.
I want to begin with a question about the Compacts of Free Association. You, of course, are the chief negotiator of those compacts. They happen between Washington and between Palau, the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia. What is so critical about these agreements, particularly in light of the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy?
United States guarantee these island states their defense, their security. In return, number two, these island states have given us so-called defense rights. Not only are we responsible for defending them, we are also responsible for keeping out anyone we and they deemed not appropriate to have control over the seas or over the air of these countries. That's very important. We call it strategic defense right. 3, these countries, their citizens, have the right to come and live in the U.S. and work, and of course go to school in the U.S. without visas. And that's a unique right we just do not give to any other countries in the world. Lastly, the United States helps them out economically through economic assistance.
How would you describe the pressure on you with respect to getting these deals closed in light of the increased presence and aggression and deals that China itself is reaching in the region? For example, it's of course reached that policing deal in the Solomon Islands. It's reached one in Fiji, although Fiji is trying to renege out of that. What is Washington's concern with that type of cooperation, and how does the Compact of Free Association fit into giving Washington additional leverage in that scenario?
Well, Jessica, it would be fruitless for me to deny that China is a big factor in the urgency and necessity of the deal. As you have correctly pointed out, Chinese have been very aggressive in the Pacific.
In practical terms, though, Ambassador, how does the relationship with the United States and these 3 Pacific Island nations advantage the United States in contingencies involving increased Chinese military presence in the sea or in the air in that part of the world?
I would say through agreements in compacts, we really have a number of key advantages. One is these countries have opened to their land and their seas to us. And so we have built number of military facilities in this region. In Marshall Islands, we have a army garrison, army base essentially in Kwajalein that will track long-range ICBMs that are fired from either Alaska or mostly California, I think, and that will track those. We also have facilities in Palau, and so not only do we have existing facilities, our agreements allow for additional facilities in these countries.
India has been taking a greater role. We saw Prime Minister Modi go to the region recently. How important do you believe it is to India's safety and to India's participation and security in the Indo-Pacific that the United States reach this agreement?
India is a very, very important power. And, you know, this is the largest democracy, of course, and multicultural society. And I do believe these islanders react very well when it's not just the US. And so, which is why our partner, Japan, is a very important partner in the Pacific, as is South Korea, as well as India. And so Indian interests are very much tied with the Pacific.
All right. Ambassador Yoon, thank you so much for joining VOA. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
All right, now Voice of America's Jessica Stone is with us. Now, Jessica, there is another bit of a hitch in the US-China relations that is on the horizon. And this, of course, is the pending visit of Taiwan's vice president to New York. So what's the latest on that front?
Yeah, William Lai is scheduled to make a transit through New York City on his way to Paraguay tomorrow, Saturday. And then he's going to come back through the United States on August 16th through San Francisco. Of course, Beijing has lodged its complaints with the U.S. government, has said this is impinging on its sovereignty because, of course, Beijing believes that it has that Taiwan is a part of China and it is a renegade province. But the State Department spokesperson reiterated this week, Matt Miller, saying that this is not a violation of the One China policy. And it doesn't appear to be as big of a blip as, for example, the visits that have been from the speakers of the House, Nancy Pelosi and almost Kevin McCarthy, to the island of Taiwan. Now, part of that is because relations are improving. There is a steady drumbeat of communications that are increasing between these two countries. And next month for the UNGA Assembly in New York City, we expect Wang Yi, the foreign minister, to be back in the United States on the way to New York City. He's expected to meet here with officials in Washington. And so that will be yet another notch in the belt, if you will, of these increasing drumbeats of meetings that will hopefully improve communications between the world's two largest economies.
Absolutely, indeed. And we also understand that President Joe Biden has signed an executive order this week to police foreign investments in China. So what's the goal of this, and how does the business community within the United States of America actually view this?
Yeah, this is getting a lot more reaction from Beijing, in fact, than William Lai's transit, because this goes to the heart of what Beijing wants to accomplish with Made in China 2025, with its agenda to be able to be self-sufficient in areas of quantum computing, semiconductors, etc. This executive order really is trying to thread a needle and basically put off limits to China specific areas of U.S. technology that have national security implications. So again, this is quantum computing, this is semiconductor production, artificial intelligence, but it is not an executive order, the White House argues, that's directed at the broader Chinese economy. Beijing's reaction: we are, quote, gravely concerned about the order and its impact on supply chains. U.S. business leaders have also had concerns because they say, the U.S. economy has greatly benefited from Chinese trade in technology in particular, and it's very closely watching how national security implications are defined under this executive order. That has to go through a rulemaking process, so they say they'll be closely watching for that, Mohammed. In
Right.
Congress, we're getting various reactions. Republicans say it's not narrow enough. Democrats say it's going a long way to address these concerns. But the real key is, how are national security implications going to be defined under this regulation? Because,
Right.
of course, in China, there's civil-military fusion, dual use of all of these technologies. So it's very hard to thread that needle. We'll see how they do it.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Jessica Stone, for joining us and getting us all those details there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.